this episode of Fully Involved.
More and more and more of this, we know you're gonna get a little tired, right? Keep it high, keep it high. Am I moving water? I sure am. But a lot of water is not going to the affected area. If you take advantage of what this water mapping prop does, you can actually see where the water goes.
The crew is back at Connecticut Fire Academy to find out how to get more water where you need it with less fatigue. We'll answer 5 questions about stream tactics specifically. 1. Which nozzle works best for this situation? 2. How can I master pre-staging for the second floor? 3. How can stream placement totally change my second floor push? 4. What should the slide into the bedroom look like? 5. Why does stream angle matter? We'll use 2 different water mapping props. And finally, a bonus tailboard talk with instructor Pete Morotto.
It's going to go ahead and control that common hallway, control that environment, and make our push easier.
The Fully Involved crew is back for a 3rd episode in Windsor Locks, Connecticut with instructors Pete Morotto and Brian Hurst. Episode 8 was all about making a low-staffed push to a fire on the first floor of a typical New England house. In episode 9, the crew covered exterior water application in the living room. Now in episode 10, the mission is get to a second floor bedroom fire, fast. And the instructors are going deep on stream placement and water mapping with 2 different props and a burn building. We pick things up in the stairwell up to the second floor after having put the living room fire out.
Look at this as we're advancing, we're going to treat this as a residential stairwell. Whether it be a multi-family, 2.5-story wood, 3-story wood frame, or just a regular residential where we're trying to make the top floor. We'll treat it as such where we have fire that is maybe overtaking the second floor, residential, out a couple rooms. We're starting to see the effects of obviously smoke starting to be in the stairwell. We did have good fire on arrival, so how are we going to go ahead and control the stairwell so we can make a push?
Let's define a couple terms that you're going to hear in this episode. 1 is water mapping, essentially the study of how nozzle pattern, angle, and movement affect where the water goes, how it maps across surfaces, instead of straight down like it was previously thought. You'll hear Captain Morotto say it. What is the water actually doing? Another term you'll hear, reflex time.
So as the units arrive, based on your staffing and your response profile to how fast those tasks get done. So generally on the Fireground, fire attack, first engine takes care of fire attack, and your first truck or outside truck will take care of outside ventilation as well as search in the inside. Depending on how your department responds, arrives, and the timing of all that, you may have an engine company on scene for 5 minutes before the next company comes up and assists you in any of those tasks. So you are working in the exhaust if there's no ventilation prior to your arrival.
Time for question 1. What equipment works best for a second floor push? In this exercise, the crew chooses an 1 3/4 inch line, a smoothbore nozzle with a 7/8 inch tip, and they're flowing about 160 gallons a minute.
We're talking about residential and hand lines. I like that smoothbore 7/8 tip for sure for this application. Again, if we were going to use the fog nozzle here, that's fine. We just have to make sure we're always on straight stream and make sure, especially with we're moving as a low staffing situation. So if you're moving low staffing, that means you're doing a lot of pulling and a lot of moving. So just be careful and be cautious if you're doing a lot of that with the combination or fog nozzle on there. It's not your intent, but as you're dragging and pulling the line, that might kick back to fog. So get into the habit of before you open that nozzle, you should have that muscle memory where you go right to that right to fight and make sure it's all the way over. Because you don't want to open up into that fog stream for you're going to get that air entrainment, and you're going to get that push behind you, right? We're going to generate a little bit more steam. So especially for what we're talking about with that remote water application, that laser beam smoothbore nozzle is really the star for something like that.
Is there a place in structural firefighting for a dispersed pattern?
using a dispersed pattern as far as for active fire situations, I don't like it. We can move into more of hydraulic ventilation, which a lot of companies will use it for hydraulic ventilation, especially if you're talking about low staffing. They may not have the ability to have, a truck company with them on the floor. So it's very easy to get quick knockdown. They might be searching off a line. Hey, we have an exhaust point here. Let's go ahead and transition to that fog to do some hydraulic ventilation. So it definitely has its point. And believe it or not, a lot of departments will use it as such. So again, depending on your application, they have their points. But for the active fire, for the fight of the fire, making sure that straight stream for sure is going to be, because then we'll show you the air entrainment stuff and what it does later on.
Question 2. What pre-staging mistakes can I avoid before making the push?
What struck me with this evolution was like the stairs is your friend from the fire.
Yeah.
But the stairs is not always your friend from hose advancement.
No,
So like your first round.
pre-staging in that stairwell is a must, right? So again, it's just like on the outside, we're pre-staging for the job. Well, how much hose do you need for the job? Well, when you pull up and you look at the fire, you should understand based on the size of the building, where the fire is showing from, how much hose you're gonna need for the job. If we're going for a second floor fire, right, we wanna get all that hose into the first floor for the job for the second floor. And as you're starting to progress up the stairs, right, bringing that nozzle coupling with you is a must, because that's gonna go ahead and say, all right, at least I have at least 25 feet with me at all times so I can start to make my initial push into the building. So again, understanding the job is gonna help tremendously. Last thing you wanna do, yes, the stairwell is a tenable position if there's no fire below you. And you can really take your time. Even with a good fire on the second floor, it is a very tenable position. So you can get your hose line, you can get everything where it needs to be. It gives you a second to get pre-staged and move in and do what you have to do.
The hose, you have the obstacles of all the corners, couplings come into effect. So pre-staging the hose over here, this would be the job of the backup guy and the control guy, and then obviously getting enough line up. Some departments will actually advance an uncharged hose line with the coupling in the nozzle at the top of the stairs, then charge it.
We should be telling everybody coming in the building, especially moving up to a second floor fire, everybody grab a hose and move it, even if you're not the engine company. Just get some hose into the stairwell, help move the line. But again, using those techniques of pinning and moving and getting that stream where we want it to be helps you tremendously. Because if you just waited to say, oh, I gotta get enough hose up here, I'm not gonna open up till I get to the fire room, that's a lot of work, right? And what takes a lot of work in reflex time? What's going to happen? The fire is going to keep moving and moving and moving. So now this tenable position here that we might have passed to go search is not tenable anymore because we never controlled this area, right? So we control the area a little bit. Gives us just a touch more reflex time to get in and do what we got to do.
Question 3. Time to make the push upstairs. What stream tactics can level up your attack? And what about coordinating with search?
So let's look at tactics, right? So you're the nozzle man on the hand line. You have a search crew coming up behind you. They're waiting for you to basically cool that environment. The nozzle man cools the hallway. You have a room that's fully involved over here. It may or may not have auto vented, right? But the search crew has to make its way down the hallway. Well, you're not going to continually wet that hallway and soak those guys. Start banking it off the top corner of that room and getting it into that room and start cooling that environment there. That allow the search crew to come down, take a peek, maybe reach in, but that room is probably untenable. If that room is fully involved, there's no survivability, okay? So they might take a look real quick to see if they can reach and see a victim that might be, have any survivability, grab them, pull them, or keep moving down the hallway. Now you can move behind them and suppress that fire.
Right, if it's the engine company, I have the weapon here. This is the answer, but it's not. Right? Because there are other people on the Fireground that are going to aggressively try to get ahead of me to do their jobs. So while I'm, from a position of advantage, if I can cool the common hallway now, while I'm getting ready to move in, they can scoot ahead to get in and do a search. That's what I want to do. I want to control the flow path. And by doing this, I'm controlling either if we're working in that exhaust or we're controlling that flow path. That's the bread and butter with this. This is why it works. That's cool. Getting up into the stairwell, pretty tenable position usually. You could only be 1 or 2 steps down in the mid landing with heavy fire condition above you and pretty much be like we're talking about without your mask on. So it's a good opportunity to get in place. If this was a multi-family and you stretch right to the floor below, you'd want to go ahead and do your stream check here, get on here and do your business. We're treating this as a residential. We came in with a charge hose line. So again, we get up here, we want to start to control that common area so we can then make our advance out. So what he's going to do is once the nozzle person opens up the line, he's going to work the top of that door frame nice and slow, and it's going to just push that water and get a good deflection into the room. Go ahead. see what the water's doing, right? If you're starting to really push it back into the room, you can push it in a little bit if you want like that. Alright, so again, we got a good hit on it real quick, getting down halfway. So again, coming off the stairwell, the angles are going to be important and critical for that remote stream application or the penetration of the reach of the stream for sure. So we want to make sure we're covering most area that we can with as little work involved as we can from that position advantage. So again, by positioning yourself on the other side of the hallway, you're not only helping with the pre-staging of the hose line, you're helping your backup person as they're pre-staging that loop to anticipate your movements, but now you're also getting in a position where you can get more scrub area of that room. So even though coming off the stairwell, we controlled this front common area, we still had to move down and move into another room. So by controlling that area, using the stream at the top of the door frames, kicking it back into the room, resetting the fire, using the deflection, by the time the nozzleman positioned himself at the other side and was able to get full movement into the room, a lot of this fire would have been darkened down in this particular area off the stairwell. So then he was able to go ahead and transition that smoothly over to then create more of a painting motion across the ceiling. You transition back down into a sweep the floor, and then we're able to go and just move into the main fire room.
To show you exactly what the water is doing, the crew heads outside to the water mapping prop.
When we were advancing into that, say, remote bedroom down the hallway, this is what it looks like in the prop.
And we'll show position of advantage or opportunity of using this reach of the stream to penetrate into a room, and how the water actually gets dispersed inside the water mapping prop.
So if you look at the early stages of water mapping and where it started, how it was really collected was buckets, right? They put 5-gallon buckets down in a room and they would do different nozzle patterns and see how the water was actually collected, which meant where was it dispersing, where was it going, right? So this prop gives us a better look because now we can actually see what the water's doing, right? Again, there's a big difference between sealed air or so if you talk about painting the hallway or going in and controlling that area, just by that minimal movement, right? I've gotten water to do what I wanted to do, to cool the common hallway. I'm going to show you, because you saw the full circles. I'm going to show you minimal nozzle movement and to map water into the hallway. So we're just going to quickly, you mind if I do it? Please. So if I do this, am I moving water? I sure am, right? But a lot of water is not going to the affected area. Now, if I was just going to go ahead and rapidly cool this hallway, okay, so what I can do is if I get in position, right, pin myself from here, right, I talked about that arm's length as far as you can reach, and I go ahead and open, lock the that environment with little or no movement, right? Again, if the ceiling wall floor is your thing, understand that's fine. It's going to take a little bit more work from the single nozzle person, but from a position of advantage, by getting the hose line up, cooling the common area, I've really mapped that water correctly and it really dispersed wherever. So now you can see, if you look there, we're starting to get some water now to start to cool that area. So it's still a door shut, right? So look at the hallway, look at what's going on in the hallway as far as what the water is doing.
Question 4. The crew slides into the bedroom to put out the fire.
I'll just going to slide up real quick. He's going to position himself from a position of advantage. Get on your arm a little bit, there you go. Again, back and forth real quick. Go ahead and controlling that common space of that room. All right, again, now being able to shut down halfway. You'll be able to slide into the room. Open up. Keep it high, keep it high. Work that door frame. Good. Good job. Watch the room. So if I open up, so if I do that and open up, really how much water did I get in that room? Really not effective. So again, you got the effectiveness of what the water looked like, but now from here, if I utilize the stream in such a manner where I'm using it for position advantage and I'm banking it off the ceiling, the door frame, whatever I can to get water into that room, watch the difference. So you truly should be able to see the effectiveness of, I didn't move my position, my interior position. All I did was change the way I was deflecting the stream, and I was able to get more water into that room, into the affected area, with just keeping the nozzle, you know, straight and move it very, very little back and forth at the ceiling, kicking it off that door. It's all about resetting the room. If I could reset the room from the common hallway, I made my job easier once I do get to the room and move in.
Now it's time for a bonus tip on finishing the job stronger.
Once you're in that fire room, you may not have done a complete search. Fire is suppressed. I don't have to work this nozzle like mad. I've already worked inside a building, up the stairs, and in the fire room. Take it easy on yourself, flip this Vortex pattern, and allow this stream to ventilate the room. This Vortex nozzle, while it is a solid stream smoothbore nozzle for that exterior application, you can rotate to a Vortex pattern, put it out the window, and hydraulically ventilate. Clear the room for any occupants you still have inside. And if you need to, you can flip right back into a smoothbore pattern, all operating at 50 PSI.
Back in Connecticut, it's time for the final question. Why does stream angle matter?
Yep.
We got water to do what we wanted to do in that room, okay? The water was delivered to the room from a remote location. This can be either from the stairwell like we talked about before, it can be from the exterior to reset the fire, or it can be as you're moving down that hallway and you have position advantage based on the side of the hallway you're on to keep that stream up, to keep it high, and to move that water into the room. If you're gonna set up a ground monitor or you have a defensive stream that comes off the rig first, you're using a 2.5, using a monitor, it's going to be the same thing. You're going to get that position hot from position of advantage, which is going to be at the ceiling level. Right? And if that goes and does that, and then your plan is to do a transition after that and break down to 1.75" or Y off to 2.5, it's going to work very, very well for that.
Conversely, if you're using an aerial or a deck-on application and you're shooting down, what are you not getting? What are you risking?
So shooting down is you're just getting one angle, right? You're getting water to fill, right? And the problem with water to fill is it's not doing what it wants you to do. It's not getting the void spaces, it's not breaching, it's not getting into the ceiling, it's not breaching the sheetrock. If you're using rapid water from an aerial, you want that rapid cooling of probably the floor. So by getting that aerial down and getting it up, you're getting into the knee walls, you're getting into the attic space, you're starting to rapidly cool that, and that's what you're going to want from the use of the aerial master stream, right? The crowd pleaser being up at the end, dumping water into something that has no roof on it, that's a garbage fire at that point. But to have truly a tactical stream from an aerial or something larger lines like that, you want to get it down and you want to get it up. You want to get it into that attic space, that cock loft, the void space, rapidly cool. You'll see a spectacular fire and there's master streams up and everybody's above shooting down. You're not getting anything. Everything's burning under the roof, right? You got to get under the soffits, under the eaves and shoot up to how you can get that water to map up into the attic space or the void space to put the fire out. And if you watch, if you take advantage of what this water mapping prop does, you can actually see where the water goes because we have the open roof. So the biggest problem, like we discussed before, with getting water in and under the roof, right? The advantage is not going to be from above, the advantage is from below. So a quick reset, again, maybe even with this 1.75" handline or a 2.5, if you can identify on your size up that the construction of the building is going to allow you to get water up into the eaves, whether it's a plastic or vinyl soffit, it's going to burn away. Obviously, if it's solid, that's going to be a bigger problem. But if it's something that you can get a line up into for a fire that's in the attic space, you will rapidly slow down the progression of that to the point where you can now get in, pull ceilings, and do all your interior firefighting and checking for extension. So I'll open the line here and we're gonna watch how the water went up, it goes up over the roof, over the rafters, and down, and cools that attic space. So if I can rapidly do it, especially in a lower staffing situation where I don't have a lot of people to interiorly get in there and start opening up. Again, if you have 30 people that show up, people are gonna get in, they're gonna open up, they're gonna do their job. But here, if you can slow down the progression of that in the attic space, you've just bought yourself some reflex time to get your interior lines in, open up and do it. Is this gonna be something you're gonna be able to do all the time? Absolutely not. Am I gonna do it at a 2.5 story frame? I'm not gonna get good reach with different building construction. But if the building construction warrants it and you can do it, not a bad idea. Give it a shot.
Now for a bonus tailboard talk. Pete Morotto ties the lesson together.
Everything from position of advantage to side of the hallway to application of the water to movement of the stream is exactly the same.
Yeah.
And you can see where if we're coining it as residential structure firefighting, this works because think about your normal residential size structure. From the front door hallway, I could reach most of that first floor with a good position of advantage from the whole zone. Right? I'm not saying I'm gonna stay there, but I'm slowing it down so I can reset it to figure out what's going on, where's the fire coming from, what's the extension, how severe is it, right? A lot of times we don't know that. You just take the door and you get that small box. There's a lot of energy coming out of that box, okay? You're getting turbulent smoke, you're getting turbulent push, push, push. A lot of times we miss what is truly burning and what's going on, right? A significant foam mattress burning in a small bedroom is gonna look like the end of the world for us, where that's all it is because that's all we're seeing. Now, if I cool those fire gases, start to deflect that stream into that room, I'm gonna slow the process of that flow path down. We're gonna have an easier time working in the exhaust, getting to the point of origin and knocking the fire out.
Want to take your residential attack to the next level? Schedule a demo at tft.com/demo so you can perform at your best.